Welcome back to Zen Gen Pet Specialists. Today we have a very, very special guest joining us. My dear friend Sharron Spencer is joining us, and she is a grief counselor. Welcome, Sharron.
Thank you so much for having me today. I'm excited to be here.
I am so excited to have you too. I mean, it's weird to talk about excitement and grief in one kind of sentence, but I think I personally know through working with my clients that there isn't a client I work with that doesn't have some sort of grief for the loss of a pet. And I know you work with human grief, and the two of us met several years ago through hospice. I joined as a volunteer for hospice. You were the grief counselor there, and sort of you kind of brought me in under your wing, and really helped me not only understand my own grief and the way I manage grief, but something that was really big for me that jumped out of working with you and in hospice was how I deal with other people's grief, which I would love to talk on a little bit here too. When someone else is grieving, and my reaction to that would have been leave them alone and don't talk to them and don't bring that thing up, that person or that animal, right? Which I think is really common and not so good. But we'll talk about that, right?
Yes, we will.
Okay, awesome. So you've got a big history of grief. You've been doing this in all kinds of aspects and places and work environments and through palliative care kind of grief work. And you're all over the board with this, helping so many people. So I know you have an abundance of information to share with us. But I want to talk and ask you first, because I think the number one thing I hear from pet grief is people are very focused on the loss. They're really like heavily focused on what they no longer have. And so do you kind of see that in your experience?
Absolutely. And so here's the thing about grief. Whether it's a person, a thing, a pet, we're grieving, and we grieve for a reason. We're grieving because that loss of connection and trying to figure out how to carry on, still wanting to love that person, that thing, that animal, but equally having to adjust to that. So that's what's happening when we're grieving. And I think the most important thing, especially with pets, is our society doesn't recognize that as a significant loss. And, for a lot of people, their pets are like their children. So if you think about the thought of losing a child, that's very significant. So I think really, yes, focusing on the loss, but what we're actually doing is we're grieving. And if we stuff that away or we push it aside, it's going to come out later.
Yeah.
So what I recommend is, if you can, is just to allow yourself to feel that pain and try to sit with yourself and acknowledge those emotions that you're feeling, because that's grieving. It's the sadness. Sometimes there's guilt involved. Sometimes there's anger involved. It depends on the situation. And also it depends if, maybe it was a sudden death, or maybe it was, they lived a long life and it was time, right? So those things are going to affect the way that we grieve.
Yes. I want to share my personal story with my old cat, Charlie, who you know, Charlie.
Yes.
You met Charlie.
Yes. Yes.
You came to my house to do a couple of Reiki sessions, and my animals just like absolutely adored you. You have allergies to cats, but of course, Charlie wanted to. Of course he came to you, right? But your energy, the way it affected my animals was so amazing. I loved it. So Charlie passed away or died, a few weeks ago, a month or so ago, I think. And the day it happened, we were kind of expecting it. He was 18 and a half, and he had had a couple of moments over the weeks before he actually died where we thought we were losing him. So we all kind of were like, oh, this is it. And then he perked back up and came to life again for a week or two. So you're kind of like, oh, okay. Right. So it was like a preparation for us. And then when he did finally die, and we kept him in our home, I did not take him. I didn't euthanize him. I allowed him to die naturally with us in the home. And I like that. That's personal for me. But I noticed that when he died, I was like, okay, he's gone. So what's for dinner? And I just was like, nothing happened. And then you begin to think to yourself, what's wrong with me? Like, why aren't I feeling this? is this like common or something that people that happen to people?
Absolutely, this is common. It's the shock, right? Even though you think
Ah,
you're prepared for it, it's the shock. And this is you adjusting to this new information that, okay, he's gone. And sometimes we feel like we're really together, and then other times we're a mess. And so
mhm.
grief happens in spurts, or sometimes I like to call it in waves, the waves of grief.
Yes.
You can be fine one moment and a puddle in the floor the next. Why am I having such a difficult time with this? And I think we don't necessarily give ourselves permission to grieve and to acknowledge how
Mm.
significant that relationship was with that pet. I mean, you had him for 18 years, right?
Yeah.
um, and suddenly who gone. And also we do have a certain, it's a different connection with pets, because we do know that their lives are shorter and we're going to lose them at some
Mm.
point. But equally it shocks us at how much it does affect us. So
Yeah.
everyone grieves differently, and we grieve different losses differently. So
Mhm.
I'm not surprised to hear that you just, okay, he's gone, carry on. And then it takes like maybe some time and some reflection, like, ooh, what am I really feeling here? Right.
Yes. And that's
Mhm.
exactly about a week later. So when he first died, I kind of let my very close family and a couple of friends know, he's gone. But about a week later, I thought, okay, I'm going to go public with this information because everybody kind of knew Charlie. He was a bit of a celebrity. Lots of my
Yeah.
clients knew him because he was always in my sessions. My students
Mhm.
knew him. So I thought I'm going to make this sort of announcement. And I did. And I had lots of people, like so many people reaching out and just saying, oh, yes, I remember him. And then it gave me the opportunity to tell kind of stories. And I remember when he did this and remember when he was like that. And then I could feel it. It was like that process of like honoring him allowed the
Mhm.
grief to come. So then I was like, oh, then the emotions hit me and I was able to kind of mourn or grieve because I had for that week kind of put it aside because I guess I didn't know what to do with it. And then it was like,
That's
okay,
right.
this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to honor him. I'm going to let everybody know. And it was what a great kind of send off, it was a really great way to kind of feel the emotions that I hadn't felt. So I think if I was to give a tip to anybody, it would be, on finding a way to honor them. Does, like some people get a gravestone, some people get them cremated into a necklace, whatever other ways. Do you have any other tips for honoring our loved ones or loved pets that are gone?
Absolutely. There's lots of things that we can do. Like you mentioned, people in their garden will have a little stone or something. You can get those kits where you can, put their name in and put the stone in your garden. Like we have one of our dogs. We actually had him cremated, and he spends the day in my husband's office, so he feels close to him. And another thing that you can do is um, you can make a little memory box. You can get those little boxes. Well, maybe not with lockdown, but you can get those little wooden boxes at the dollar store, and you can decorate it however you like to honor them. And you can keep like their collar or their tags or little things like
Mm-hmm.
that
Mm-hmm.
inside. Um, Another thing is, doing a collage of pictures, just having a little space in the home that honors them. We've always taken photos of our dogs' noses. It's close up of their nose, so we
Oh,
know by looking at that nose who that dog
yes.
is.
Oh, I love that
Yes, and so
idea.
yeah, and so we have pictures of their noses up in one of our bathrooms.
Yes.
It's just a little, you walk by, you say hello subconsciously kind of thing. So it's just our way of honoring them. And this is part of grieving too. It's how am I going to honor the memory of them? I have lots of wonderful memories. Yes, I'm sad they're gone. But I think what happens too when like in your instance, like you to me are textbook in the sense that you took some time, you had to figure out how you felt about it. Sometimes we're not ready to experience the pain or the sadness of those emotions, so
Yeah.
we take that week or two and then, okay, I'm ready now, I'm ready to share this with the world because I know people are going to give me some sympathy. And sometimes, like, I don't know about you, but me, I'm fine, I can hold my emotions together, but as soon as someone shows me some sympathy, It's like
Yes.
they've given me permission to open up those floodgates.
Yes. I
So
think that's what it was. That makes a lot of
yeah.
sense. Wow.
Yeah. So yeah, and then like you're honoring him by telling stories. And this is the other thing that so if you're not knowing how to support someone who's lost a pet or is experiencing, some kind of loss, here's the number one thing. And you mentioned it in the beginning, like we're afraid to mention it. I don't know if I should say something. They seem like they're doing okay and I don't want to upset them. Number one thing is, first of all, they're already upset. They haven't forgotten that they've experienced this loss. So having someone say their name or tell a story, oh, what an honor, right? Because it
Yes.
shows me that A, you remember them, and B, that you have memories too. And I love to talk about my pets that I've lost, my people that I've lost. So
Yes.
yeah, you may create a tear or something, but that's okay. It needed to come out anyway, and you provided me that opportunity. And I think as a society, we are very concerned about upsetting people, and we're like, oh, emotions, and
Yes.
feel
Yes.
uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But
People,
what a
sorry.
great gift you can give to someone.
Yeah. And people think, oh, I don't want to upset them. Well, you're not upsetting them. You're helping them feel, and it may come across
Mhm,
as, but you're right. We're very uncomfortable around emotion. And,
mhm,
and so getting comfortable with that and just knowing you don't have to fix it. Cause I think that's what we also,
mhm.
they're crying. I better fix this. What can I say now? And you don't
That's
have
right.
to
Yeah,
just, as we say in the field, hold space, just allow that
that's right.
person, right, to experience what they're experiencing, and without fixing them. Maybe a hug is all they need. Maybe they don't want a hug, but it's just being there and allowing them is so healing. It's very helpful.
Yeah.
Okay. This
I
is
was just
this.
going to say
Right.
one more
Yeah.
thing. One more thing. We can't fix someone who's grieving. It's a journey that they themselves have to work through,
Yeah.
and walk that path. And so, we also feel awkward, like I don't know what to say. And you know what? That's the best thing to say. I don't know what to say. I just I feel sad for your loss, and I'd love to hear a story, or tell me something about them,
Yes.
or how are you doing today? Like, how is today?
Hmm.
Right?
And maybe even that question, is there anything I can do? Like, I don't know what to say, but if there's anything I can do, do you want to go for a walk and talk? Or what, if there's anything I can do, let me know. Right. It's putting that, you don't have to fix it. You put it in their court, so to
Mhm.
speak. And if they want and need you, then they know that you've put that offer out there for them. Okay,
Exactly. Yeah.
let's dive in a little bit into regret and guilt, because this
Mhm.
comes so hand in hand with the loss of a pet. Because often at the end of a pet's life, they usually have maybe they have an illness, and you question whether you could have done something to prevent it better, or you've made the decision to euthanize, and then you walk away going, did I make the right decision? And I
Mhm.
know so many people live with the regret and guilt. And if there's a way to sort of process that and move past it, or what do we do with regret and guilt?
So, when we feel guilt, for instance, it usually stems from a feeling of helplessness. Helplessness turns into guilt. I should have, I could have, I would have, right? If only.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And so that's where the guilt comes from.
Okay.
The regrets, that's the same thing. You cared about them. You don't want to see them suffer or to think that they've been in pain. Am I doing the right thing? Well, your vet is not going to do something that isn't necessary, or they're going to recommend, because humanely they don't want to see the pet suffer either. So my biggest advice for that is recognize that it's also part of the grieving, the regrets, the guilt, and even anger. Sometimes we're angry at the disease, or we're angry at a
Mhm.
person, say they died by an accident. It's normal. It's part of the grieving. It's part of us adjusting to it. So there are some really good. One of the best exercises for that is, well, there's two things. anger and guilt, move your body. You got to process that and get the blood pumping kind of thing.
Okay.
Movement helps us from staying stuck in our grief or stuck in that ruminating. So that's a really good thing. Another thing is writing a letter. Maybe you need to write a letter to your pet. You know what, I'm really sorry, I did the best I could, whatever you need to express, and then burn that letter, let it go. Don't keep on holding on to those things, because there's nothing you can do to change it, right?
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
just part of you coming to terms with the situation. So those are really two really good tools that you can use when you're struggling with those things.
Right. That's amazing. I love those ideas. And I've also shared with people too. I always ask them, what is it you think your pet taught you in your life? Like, what was the
Mhm.
lesson? What did you go through in your life with this animal, and how did you become better? What did you learn from them? And everybody always has this great, message. They taught me unconditional love. They taught me how to play. They got me out of my shell, whatever it is, right? But these animals are always giving us something, right? And a great way to honor your pet is to take that lesson and apply it to your life. If they taught you how to love unconditionally, go out and start loving unconditionally.
Mhm.
Bring them, keep them in your heart, and use that as a driving force in your life to honor them. Be the things that they taught you. And that's a great way to kind of switch from the focus on the loss versus focusing on the abundance they gave you. They filled your life so much, and yeah, there's a hole, but hang on to that fill. That, what did they give you? And I find that helps shift people and remind them, and it actually makes them feel good. Right? They go from so upset of the loss, and you say, well, tell me all the great things, and then they're smiling. And it's like, that's
Mhm.
how, feel the pain, like you're saying, go there, but also remember the good stuff, and it'll shift you back into that smile and that good feeling. And the other thing I hear people say that always makes me so sad is after they lose a pet is, I'm never getting another pet again. Have you,
Mhm.
right? Don't people say that? Have you heard that before? It's like, I'm never going to have another
Mhm.
pet again. And I always say, you don't mean that. The
Yeah.
pain, the pain of the loss is real, but the love you got during their life is so worth having another one. And your pet does not want you to never have another one again. That's kind of not the point, right? So I can
Right.
understand. And so many people feel that. They're like, that hurts so bad. I never want another one. And they live through that for a while, but they eventually get out of it and move past that. But I think that's a pretty real feeling and expression people have.
It is. And you bring up a good point too, is when is it time to get another pet? And it's again differs from person to person. I know people
Mm,
who've gone out a week later and got another pet. And I think the only issue that could come from that is you're replacing the pet that you lost, but recognize that they're going to have a different personality. They can't,
yes.
they're not going to be the same.
Yeah.
So some people will wait a year or two. It just really depends. There's no right or wrong. It's what suits you, right? Um,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and the other thing too, especially if we look at seniors who have had a pet and lost a pet, often if they've been on their own, especially, that pet was their purpose every day. So now not only that's why they struggle so hard, not only have they lost their pet, but they've lost their purpose. Now what, right? It's a huge
Yes.
gaping hole. So it's really just, I think another thing that I hear a lot too is like, am I going to cry forever? And
Yeah.
it's usually like a week or two, and you get it out, and then okay, I can deal with this now. So again, it's very individual, but I think we tend there's a term called disenfranchised grief, and this is where society decides what is the proper way to grieve or the proper amount of time. And so I've also heard a lot of times people will say, oh my god, it was just a dog, like, aren't you over this yet?
Yes.
And I think the thing is, I've seen these illustrations on social media. um, I feel happy for you that you haven't experienced a loss so significant that you don't understand what I'm going through.
Yes. Right? Like that puts it into perspective for people that that's the way you respond. It's not everybody's feels it like you do. They may never have had that kind of relationship that you do, or had. And that, again, that's how do you support someone who's grieving? Well, you don't say something like that. It was just a dog. It was
Yeah.
just a cat.
Yeah.
Just don't say things like that. That's not very helpful. Because it's more than that to that person. It's could, like you're saying, the seniors, it's their purpose, and getting them
Mm-hmm.
up and every single day. And that's a tough loss,
Mm-hmm.
especially in COVID times, because we're all
Yes.
sort of, people that are living alone and have a pet have become even more connected with their animal and dependent on each
Right.
other. And our animals are becoming more used to us being around all the time. It's,
Mhm.
yeah, we're getting even stronger in that connection. So I hope that,
Yes.
yeah, I hope that this is, helpful for people, and give them the permission to grieve. You're allowed, and nobody can tell you it's too much or too little, and how to do it. And you may be like me, and just kind of put it on the back burner for a while until it hits you, or you may hit you right away, and you deal and feel awful for a long time. But there's lots of people like yourself, like myself, Facebook groups you had mentioned out there. Maybe just let some people know that they're where they can go for support.
Yes. So first of all, your vet will always have some resources for you for support about grieving the loss of a pet. And there is in Guelph, the Ontario Veterinary College website, they have a couple of guides. One is, grieving the loss of a pet, but they also have helping children grieving the loss of a pet. And for children, a lot of times it's the first time that they've experienced loss.
Yeah.
So it's a really good guide on how to support a child through the loss of a pet. So I will give that website to you to
Great.
post.
Okay.
And there's another one, it's called secondhopecircle.org. And basically there are counselors who do counseling for pet loss. And so it's just a resource that
Mm.
gives a list of counselors in Ontario. So, really it's just Google, have a
Yeah.
look and find out what's local to you. But there are supports out there for people, and don't be ashamed or feel silly for needing support. Like I said, we can't judge the connection that you have with another.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's what we're grieving, is that loss of connection.
Yeah, for sure. Amazing. Okay. This is great. Yeah, I want people to know that they're not alone, and that they have the right to
Yeah.
feel what they feel in the way that they feel it. And there's plenty of people
Hmm.
out there that want to support them through this, and help them. And it could be a loss you had 10 years ago. It's still there, right? We
Right.
can all remember our
Hmm.
pets from when we were children. And great point I'm bringing up loss for kids and children,
Yeah.
because I didn't even consider that. And for my kids, I just thought of myself and how I'm feeling and the loss of the animal, but everybody lost in this family. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, it's important. It's life. It's the circle of life. And it's going to affect our kids too, even though they don't show it as much, right? They may not be able to process it. They're not sure what to do with it. So check in on your kids when it comes to pet
Exactly.
loss. Yeah. Great.
Hmm.
Thank you so much, Sharron. This has been very, very helpful. I hope that this just helps people feel warm and fuzzy and know they're not alone, and that grief is real, and to always reach out. And we'll put all these links in the description so people can get to where they need to go, and
Yeah.
get the help that they need if they need it. So thank you so much for
Yeah.
joining me.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
All right. Take care.